Gas tax rises that led to weeks of forcible protests in France now been deferred for 6 months. The go was announced in a televised address by PM Edouard Philippe, who told nobody would to be blind or curtain not to listen or see the wrath. The protests hit main cities, challenging harm and destruction above the History 3 output. The Gilets jaunes, amber waistcoat, protests now grown up to represent more than common wrath by the government. The amber vests are so named since they undertaken to the gateway tiring the top visibility amber clothes how is required to be transferred in each car by France Act. CEO Emmanuel Macron was selected recent year in an insurmountable credentials for sweep economical reformation, but his popular has fall dramatically in latter months among accusations how he is a CEO for the wealthy. 4 persons human beings dead with the strife began and the resultant abuse and hooliganism been wide convicted. Mr. Philippe told how the following plan growth in the as-called carbon sequestration tax on car gas, that had been due to go in on January 1, would be hanging for 6 months to enable consultations through the nation to see which concomitant measures might be entered to ease the load for the lowest off. He as well told plan increases in gas and power prices the winter would be halted, and how a stricter of the rules for car emissions tests would as well be deferred. It is a main concession by the government of CEO Macron, who has told the measures are required to fight environment changing and encounter budgeting deficiency reducing targets. The wrath, you would to be blind and curtain not to see it, nor listen it, told Mr. Philippe following meet lawmakers of the steering side La République en Marche. This France who donned amber vests wish taxes to fall, and job to pay in. House as well which we wish. If I didn't supervise to explanation it, if the governing most didn't supervise to persuade the France, later thing must changing, he added in his televised address. No tax being setting the oneness of the nationality in risk. But he told the abuse must halt. If down there is else day of protests, it must be proclaimed in preliminary and must get location quietly. He as well alerted how human beings should not wait superior social services near reduced taxes. Mr. Macron was selected on a plate of economical reformation that would enhance the lives of France's human beings via reduced joblessness and a boot-started economics. But lot sense how has not founded. An analyse of the 2018-19 budgeting transferred out by France's Social Politics Institution, for sample, found how incomes for the poorest block of households would substantially fall or remain the identical by the plans. Medium income earners would see a humble crash, but the big beneficiaries would be such who were already rich, in the top 1%. The design is worst for retired human beings, nearly all of whom will be worst away. Will it be quite? How is the at first issue? Will the amber vests sense they won a big quite session of by the government, and thus urge off their outcry? Down there are lot of sounding how can be heard present proverb they wish more than. Why is it just a suspend of the tax growth, they request, and not an abolishment? Which is to warranty how by the government restore it following June. Perhaps we requirement to move up the blood pressure. But by manufacturing a session, by the government does not requirement to meet everyone. It is necessary just to meet a big quite block of moderates amongst the Gilets jaunes, and disaccustom them off of the barricades. If how happens, later the motion will miss pulse. And although it won't be above, the end will be in view. My bet would be how the will be which happens. View polls will show a general adoption of by the government's session. The Gilets jaunes and Masse begin to hesitate. But down there's yet a outcry by hardliners on Saturday. Perhaps a farewell shooting, but yet, and perhaps since of how, a hazardous time. The at first issue is if the session will be quite to meet the protesters. Several vowed to hold up a siege at an oil warehouse in Lorient in the polar west of the nation, and down there been telephone call for future demonstrations on Saturday. Amber Waistcoat Representative Benjamin Kochi told the motion requested a cancel, not a delay, of the taxes. This measures announced present do not meet us at all, For the easy cause they don't go far quite, he said interviewer Chris Bachmann in Toulouse. This France human beings wish a full policy conversion. They wish to changing the way things include been for the recent 30-year. We're patient and weary of taxes creature grown and the quality assurance of social services departure downward. Down there are more than human beings out down there who can't do ends encounter every monthly, more than human beings are asleep course and yet we go on to lift taxes. Wherever is the cash departure? Wherever is it creature utilized? Fears how forcible protests in the equity could go on following weekend include led Paris Saint-Germain to delay their Ligue 1 household soccer match stick on Saturday. The Gilets jaunes motion began as a outcry versus a growth in duties on diesel engine, that is wide utilized by France motorists and has length been less than hard taxable rather than some types of gas. The cost of diesel engine, the largest usually utilized gas in France cars, has rising by on 23% above the history 12 months to an ordinary of euro, pound, dollar, per liter, its highest spot with the previous 2000s. Mr. Macron has accused Planet Oil prices for 3/4 of the cost growth, but told high taxes on fossil embers were necessary to foundation revolving power investment. The judgment to levy a future growth of 6.5 cents on diesel engine and 2.9 cents on gasoline of January 1, 2019 was seen as the definitive stubble for the protesters. Protesters say Mr. Macron is out of concern, especially in non-city dwellers who trust on their cars. The motion has grown up to represent a band of grievances, consisting the marginalization of village areas, top residing expenses, and general wrath at CEO Macron's economical policies. The protests include no recognizable management and obtained pulse via public print, covering a band of attending of the anarchism far leftward to the nationalist far order, and lot of moderates in among. In latter days, emergency drivers and students include start up their own protests.